This is the real thing.
This is the real thing. Welcome to North Country Commerce, a business and community service of the Plattsburgh North Country Chamber of Commerce. I'm Gary Douglas, and with me here today is Patrick Russell, Chair of the Government Affairs Committee at the Chamber. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you, Gary.
We're going to give you a little bit of the coverage of what happened on May 4th in Plattsburgh when the Chamber and our Government Affairs Committee hosted as one of a series of forums with top officials and top candidates who we enjoy bringing to the North Country to interact with business people. First Lady Hillary Clinton, candidate for the U.S. Senate. Pat, why is it important that we bring these folks in to meet with the Chamber and meet with business?
Well, we have unique concerns and things that we want to make sure that Washington's aware of. And we've had good luck in dealing with the staff of Senator Schumer in Washington, especially with the border project and those types of things. We want to make sure that all the candidates are aware of what our concerns are, ranging from the border to capital gains tax cuts and things like that.
Basically, I guess put it in a nutshell, our commitment as a chamber is to be a lead advocate for the North Country in general and for North Country business in particular. And ideally, anywhere, anytime decisions are being made that impact the North Country economy, we want to have a place at that table. We want to have the ear of those decision makers to lend voice to those decisions. And that includes having access to and getting our message to and our agenda in front of anybody who's in a decision to make those in a position to make those decisions, or anybody, as in the case of a major candidate, who may be in the future in a position to make those decisions. And that's what today's forum and reception is about. And with that, we'll let you enjoy the remarks and have a look at some of what went on. Welcome, everybody, on behalf of the Plattsburgh North Country Chamber of Commerce, and particularly our Government Affairs Committee, the sponsors of this, which is one, as you all know, in a continuing series of forums that we endeavor to offer, giving the North Country business community an opportunity to meet and interact with key leaders who are or may be in a position to impact the decisions that are important to the economy of the North Country. We're always pleased to be able to arrange these, and certainly particularly pleased to host our special guest this morning. Let me just acknowledge just a couple of our officers at the Chamber, the Chair of the Government Affairs Committee, Patrick Russell, and Vice Chair of the Chamber, standing in for Chair Richard Beach, Vice Chair Randy Beach this morning. We also have with us a few other folks that I'd like to acknowledge here in an official capacity. Supervisor of the Town of Plattsburgh, Andy Abdallah, Supervisor of the Town of Willsboro, Teresa Sayward, representing Empire State Development, Rosemary Redmond. I really can't see out there with the light, but I'm sure you're out there. And from Assemblyman Chris Ortloff's office, Tina Recor. We thank them for joining us. And I also want to acknowledge and thank Shirley O'Connell for her assistance and cooperation in helping the Chamber to arrange this opportunity for all of you this morning. Before I introduce our special guest, I want to thank Clinton Community College for sponsoring and hosting this event in this wonderful facility with this terrific vista out on Lake Champlain. It certainly showcases two very important things that make a statement about the North Country: our natural beauty, which we see out the window, and also this very facility, an industrial and science facility just recently built and opened to help sustain the economic growth and the growth of manufacturing that we're experiencing here. At that, I'd like to call for welcoming remarks Dr. Therese Bushner, President of Clinton Community College.
Welcome, and on behalf of the Board of Trustees, the faculty, the staff, the students, and the alumni of Clinton Community College, we're pleased to welcome the First Lady this morning. And I want you to know I did present her with a Clinton Community College sweatshirt earlier. Not that she should have any trouble remembering our name now and in the future, but just to be sure, I want all of our college community to know that she has our today, as the Hotel Champlain in the building not far from us has a long list of distinguished visitors who came in the early 1900s to that wonderful hotel. Today, this building, our Art, Science, and Technology new building, now has its first distinguished visitor from the White House. So again, welcome to each of you, and welcome, Mrs. Clinton.
Just a few years ago, 20, 30 years ago, even 5, 6 years ago, very much the case, our area seemed to many of us, and certainly I think to most average people in the North Country, as isolated, facing what may have seemed as some insurmountable challenges, including the closure of our Air Force Base, exchange rates dipping. It may have even seemed hopeless. And yet we stand here today with the Plattsburgh area leading the entire state in the growth of manufacturing. Park setting itself up really is probably the first private sector redevelopment success story. Exciting opportunities before us, particularly those tied to our Champlain-Hudson corridor and all that's happening with our Can-Am connection. But those opportunities require the solutions to some challenges in front of us. At the border, helping agriculture, taking care of things like distributing the basic resources of growth, gas, telecommunications. We need champions in Washington and in Albany to help us solve those problems. We can't do them ourselves. We've had some excellent champions and have some now. Senator D'Amato was an excellent champion for us. Senator Schumer has become an excellent champion for us. Our North Country Congressman John Sweeney, John McHugh, we certainly know of our champions in Albany, Governor Pataki, Chris Ortloff, Betty Little, and certainly the great Senator Stafford. We're fortunate to have those people. We will need champions in the future. And that's what these gatherings are about, is to tell our story and to begin a relationship and a dialogue with people who may become, and hopefully may become, our champions in the future, who may be in those positions to help us with those things. I had the opportunity just a few moments ago to meet with Mrs. Clinton to provide her with the Chamber's, the business community's agenda for economic prosperity in the new century in the North Country. We had the opportunity to cover those issues, but I will also express my pleasure in how much I was impressed that she is already very well informed on those issues and very much demonstrates she's very much aware of the things happening in the North Country. And I know through our mutual friend Gordon Giffen, very well briefed in particular on Can-Am relations and the importance of the northern border. So we look forward to continue to dialogue on those issues and want today to be a beginning, and we're sure that it is just a beginning of a continuing communication between the business community of the North Country and Mrs. Clinton, and we will be looking forward obviously to building similar dialogues with other folks who may be our champions in Washington. That's why this is important. That's why we appreciate and thank Mrs. Clinton for this opportunity to become acquainted and to begin that conversation about how we achieve the economic hopes and dreams of the people of this region. Before that, I want to say one other thing in terms of a thank you, and it's a thank you that I would ask our guests to convey back to somebody I believe she probably talks to on a daily basis, President Clinton, because I think we should thank the President for what I would suggest, certainly from our perspective here, will be the greatest and most lasting legacy of his time in the White House. And that was the finalization and ratification of the North American Free Trade Act. That is what is driving all of the progress and the hopes and opportunities that we have before us today. Trade works. Trade is good. Trade brings prosperity. Trade is under challenge today for some people who don't understand that. We understand it here. We live with the good impacts of it. And we thank the President for his leadership in bringing NAFTA to us and its benefits. And with that, it's my great pleasure, on behalf of the Chamber, to introduce our special guest, Hillary Rodham Clinton.
And thank you for the briefing that he gave me. He gave me a great big, thick notebook filled with facts and statistics and information, which I promise that I will read and absorb. I took 2 sheets out so that I could have them as a ready reference when I was speaking with you this morning. I also particularly thank Teresa Bushner and everyone associated with the college here, and you could not have given me a better view in the entire world. I'm sorry your backs are to the lake, and I get to look out at it, and if I start to drift off for a minute or two, call me back in. I want to thank the Plattsburgh North Country Chamber of Commerce for this gathering this morning, and Shirley O'Connell, thank you for your work, which I appreciate very much. You know, I was struck even before Gary gave me the briefing with the statistics that represent the stories behind the success of the resurgence of Plattsburgh and Clinton County and this region of the North Country. And I must say that it's a great joy for me, having now visited all 62 counties in New York, which I have absolutely relished, to end here in Clinton County, and especially at a time when Clinton County seems to have absorbed the lessons of that gentleman that Gary was referring to, who sometimes is referred to not just as the president, but as the comeback president. Well, here we are in the comeback region, and the kind of energy and activity and success that this poster and the statistics I studied and the briefing that Gary gave me is a real tribute to what all of you have done. The kind of civic pride and spirit and efforts to recruit industry and to make the Air Base a hub of such activity, to lower utility rates, which is one of the continuing struggles that we face not only in the North Country but throughout upstate, and to win the right to be called one of the best places to live and raise a family, not just in the state but in the entire country. So really, I'm here to applaud all of you and to tell you that I would like to be your partner in continuing this effort. Because with the achievements that you've already demonstrated and the success that we can point to, I think that we cannot merely rest on that accomplishment, but we have a lot of work to do to build on it and to make it even more dramatic. And there's such opportunity ahead of us if we have the kind of partnership among federal, state, and local governments and between the public and the private sectors. That really is what the President's administration and what he and I have worked on for many years. It's what I've spent 30 years working on, bringing opportunity to people, trying to equip people to take advantage of the opportunities, opening up new areas for development, increasing access to capital and credit, improving education, working with community colleges so that they're a part of the economic. And I know that the work that business and labor have done here is a real example of what we need to do elsewhere in the state. As Gary was explaining to me, the kind of Can-Am cooperation and partnership that you have built on is one that I would like to see sweep through the North Country all the way to Western New York, because it is such a source of economic empowerment and dynamism. And as I was talking with Gary, I realized from what he told me that Clinton County does continue to lead the entire state in the growth of manufacturing employment. And the Champlain-Hudson trade corridor is an example of what trade can bring, the rewards of trade and how we bring those rewards home and get them to create new jobs and opportunities among the people here. Part of what has been accomplished is a willingness to look at reality and roll up your sleeves and get to work to make sure you could take advantage of whatever could come your way. And bringing all of the people together, as I've learned, here in Plattsburgh and the North Country, has been a signal goal of the Chamber of Commerce. So therefore, you have brought business owners and leaders, labor leaders, community leaders, education leaders, to work to build a better, stronger, and healthier community. Now, I don't have to tell you, though, that although we've made a lot of progress in the last 7 years in our country, we still have a lot of work to do. I started my day yesterday in Washington County. I visited Hamilton and Franklin counties. The prosperity has not yet reached those places. And I certainly have been throughout upstate and can tell you stories that are not optimistic, that don't have the same kind of commitment to a positive future that we can find here. One of the reasons that I'm pleased that I've ended my tour of the state here is because this is a place that can serve as an example as to what needs to be done elsewhere. And I believe that story will become a part of my campaign, because I want to persuade people throughout the state that we are one state, that we have to work together, that the opportunities in the North Country are good for people in Buffalo, and they're good for people on Long Island, and they're good for people in Manhattan, because it is the entire state that has to compete for federal dollars. It is the entire state that will be determining in the next census whether we lose a member of Congress, which thereby means we might lose some of our influence in Washington. So we have to recognize that the success in Clinton County should serve as an example and a spur to everyone else. So I hope, Gary, it won't be a problem, but I'm going to be telling people to come and visit you and to sit down from the southern tier, to Erie County, Monroe County, to talk about what can be done that you have done here that can make such a difference. But I don't believe in patting ourselves on the back. I think we should get up every day and ask ourselves, what else can we do? How do we do a better job to provide even more opportunities? And to that end, I have some suggestions and some ideas about what I would like to do working with you. Now, specifically, Gary's given me a list. And I appreciate that, because I want to applaud Gary, because, to me, that's what should happen everywhere I go. People from the chamber, the business and labor communities, they ought to come and say, here's my list. And if you're going to be my senator, I want to know, are you going to help me on these things? I think that's exactly the way the system ought to work. And this is the first time I've been given such a list, which I think indicates why you're doing so well, because you all aren't shy. And I happen to appreciate that, because we have a lot of work to do. And let me just briefly, before I get into more national issues and what I would do as a senator, let me just briefly run through this list that Gary gave me. A Port of Excellence for Champlain. Now, I know that this is the only border crossing, thanks to the briefing I received, that is within the total control of the federal government, something I didn't know. I've heard about the problems crossing over near Watertown, over Buffalo, the problems with the bridge traffic, the backups. They are a fact of life all along the border between New York and Canada. And that is holding back economic progress, it's holding back the transportation of goods and services, it is a deterrence to tourism. I pledge that I will do everything I can to open up this border and provide easier, quicker crossing. And anything we can do to get a port of excellence that builds on the success that you've already demonstrated here, I will stand with Senator Schumer and with all of you to do everything possible until we get that done. Follow in the footsteps of Senator Moynihan when it comes to Can-Am relations. Gordon Giffen is a good friend of mine, and he and I have already spoken. He gave me a briefing some months ago about the number of Canadian businesses that have set up shop here in this county that are employing New Yorkers. I was very pleased to hear that. I think we need to continue to build on Can-Am relations. As you all know, we're only an hour from Montreal, one of the large metropolitan, cosmopolitan cities in North America. I hadn't heard Plattsburgh referred to as a suburb of Montreal before Gary did, but you know, I think that kind of forward-looking and open-minded attitude about where economic opportunity can flow from really does demand that we continue to improve and broaden our Canadian-American relations. I also will be a partner with you in ensuring that Plattsburgh, the air base, continues to get the support and development that you need. It is one of the success stories of the entire BRAC process. Not as many places can point to as many jobs that have been created and cited on the base, but I hope we can come back in a year or two and have doubled or tripled that number. So I will work with you to make sure that we continue to do that. The other infrastructure priorities that you've identified, the Olympic facility upgrades, I have told everybody that I can that one of the joys for me in traveling so extensively throughout the state and in going to all 62 counties is that there is no more beautiful place in America than upstate New York. And no more beautiful part of upstate, the North Country, and Exhibit A is out there behind you. So what do we do to keep attracting people and provide not just the site for the Goodwill Games, you know, once every 4, 8, or 10 years, but have regular use of those Olympic facilities? And I think that your plans for that are something that I would certainly support. I also was interested in hearing the commitment that you have to natural gas distribution. I think New York is disadvantaged because we don't have enough natural gas distribution, either residentially or commercially. I mean, I was just stunned when I got my first home heating oil bill. You know, I did a double take. I looked at it twice, and I told my husband every time I saw our local home heating oil truck go by, I felt like it was, you know, just taking bushels of our money away. Well, in fact, part of the reason is we don't have enough competition from natural gas. And we have not laid those pipelines and been able to transport that cheap natural gas from Canada and elsewhere in the United States. I think it is and should be a primary economic objective, not only for the North Country, but for the entire state. We could save enormous amounts of money. We could make our industries more energy efficient, therefore more cost effective, but we have to do more to figure out how to subsidize the laying of the lines and the distribution of the gas. This is something that I care deeply about because we're going to be deregulating electricity. I'll say something about that in a minute. Hope that that will lower the costs. But we have 3 big obstacles overall to upstate economic development. We have the second highest state and local tax rates in the country. Again, as a new resident, I take that very seriously. We have the highest utility costs in the whole country, and we do not have adequate transportation, either land or air. So anything we can do to overcome those obstacles will open up tremendous opportunities. I also have spoken at length in other settings about trying to provide an infrastructure for telecommunications so that we have a broadband network that provides quick, easy, inexpensive access to the internet everywhere throughout the North Country and upstate. And that will be also a priority for me. I have pledged my support for New York's entry into the Northeast Dairy Compact because I keep saying wherever I can that agriculture is still the #1 industry in New York. And a lot of people don't know that. And we cannot revitalize the upstate economy if we do not revitalize the agriculture sector. And certainly doing what we need to do on dairy is critical, but also cash crops and the entire situation of farming has a direct effect on not only the economy, but the quality of life in so many of our rural areas. So I will, Gary, very much look forward. You can tell he's a very good instructor. It took only about 10 or 15 minutes, and he gave me a lot of good information that I will certainly absorb and take back with me. But let me now go to a larger national context, because I think anything we would attempt to do to try to continue to provide economic opportunity here will be affected directly or indirectly by the decisions that I will be making in the Senate and the decisions that will be made on behalf of our country by a new president and a new Congress. First and foremost, I do not believe we can afford to veer off the course of fiscal discipline. This is the only way I think we can continue to keep our economy strong and make progress on our continuing long-term challenges. You know, we have a projected budget surplus this year of $167 billion. It is the fourth budget surplus in a row and the largest budget surplus on record. I'm very proud of the policies and leadership that the President and the Vice President brought to fiscal issues. And I think that we have made the right, tough decisions in the last 7 years. And I believe that we have reached a national consensus to set aside the bulk of the surplus to save Social Security for the 21st century. Now that is a commitment that I think is important for us to keep for many reasons. But the portion of the surplus that is projected for the next 10 years that is not being set aside for Social Security remains substantial. The conservative estimates are that it could approach, now again, we're still talking theoretically. We don't have those surpluses in hand, which is another reason why I think we have to be prudent and not spend the surpluses before we have them. But we anticipate having approximately $750 billion over the next 10 years. Now, I think we have to make the right choices. So in addition to shoring up Social Security, I believe we should use those resources to pay down and eventually eliminate the national debt. I think we also should be providing targeted tax cuts to middle-class Americans, so I do believe in tax cuts. I just do not think we can afford a very large, and in my view, irresponsible tax plan that would bust a hole in this budget and put our prosperity at risk. So let me tell you what I would do. I would use a portion of the non-Social Security surplus, around $350 billion over the next decade, to pay off the national debt and eliminate it entirely by 2013. Now, as you know, as business leaders, and really as homeowners, as any of us who have to make these decisions, lower debt means lower real interest rates and more capital for investment. And this has been the greatest boon to our economy over the last 7 years by keeping those interest rates low and increasing access to private capital. We have seen that real interest rates have fallen 2%, not only with new jobs being created, but whole companies being created because of the affordability of those lower interest rates. And the typical American family has already saved $2,000 a year in mortgage payments. So I think about what we owe the next generation, what we owe those young people. And I think one of our greatest intergenerational debts is to eliminate our national debt. I do not believe that my daughter or these young people should have to be paying for the quadrupling of our national debt between 1981 and 1992. That is something we should remove from their shoulders so that they can raise their children, plan their futures the way that every one of us got a chance to do that in a time of stable prosperity with economic opportunities being driven by that kind of good fiscal policy. But even as I would fight to balance the budget and pay down the debt, I also believe we can cut taxes, and we can do it in a way that honors our families and reflects our deepest values. Now, as a senator, I will not have any direct authority over state and local taxes, but I'm pleased that we're beginning to see some moves in Albany to lower the burden of state taxes. And I think there are some ways we can make it even easier for New York families. First of all, I would fight to make college tuition tax deductible, $10,000. Person who's willing to work hard and be responsible should be able to afford to go to college. And we have done a lot in the last few years with the Hope Scholarships, Pell Grants, more work study. But let's just make this investment in our children's future tax deductible, which would be an encouragement for people to really make it possible for their own children to go to college. I also would like to fight for a $3,000 a year long-term care tax credit to help families pay for their aging parents. I hear as much about this issue as I do about any other. And there are so many families trying to care for parents or grandparents with Alzheimer's or with chronic disabilities. I'd like to be sure that we provide the help and support that all of us need to do that important work. I will also fight for a tax credit for businesses that provide child care, because we need to support working families and we need to do a better job, and by giving some tax relief to businesses that provide either a benefit or an on-site or contribute to a chamber-sponsored child care program, whatever the combination of options might be, we've got to do a better job of providing good quality child care, because we have parents in the workforce who cannot afford to stay home. Now, I also believe we should make it more attractive for those parents who can't afford to stay home, and I'd like to see more tax relief for stay-at-home moms, because I think it should be a real choice. Either you can stay home and you choose to, or you choose not to and you have to work. We should make it possible for our children to get the best possible care, either at home or out of the home. Like to make the research and development tax credit permanent. We have to keep reauthorizing it every year. Let's make it permanent. We're going to create new jobs if we tell businesses, if you invest in research and development and you are able to take advantage of this, we will be able to see some economic benefits from it. I also want to be sure that we lower estate taxes so that family farms and family-owned businesses can be passed along to the families that built them up. And I will fight for all of these tax cuts. But I want to give you full disclosure, and I know that there are many Republicans in this audience, and I look forward to working with Republicans, Democrats, every New Yorker on behalf of our state. But I want you to know I cannot support Governor Bush's large across-the-board tax cut. I do not think that's right for New York or for our country. I believe it would severely drain resources from New York. Now, I've been trying to get the exact figures, and when I get them, I'll talk about it. But we are already disadvantaged in Washington. Our state sends $15 billion more to Washington than we get back. I've talked about this ever since I appeared with Senator Moynihan in July, because he has talked about it for years. And I think it's finally getting some resonance and more people are understanding what an important issue this is. But built into the federal government's funding formulas, some going back as far as the Depression, others since the 50s and the 60s, like Medicaid, and others more recent in the 70s and 80s, we are disadvantaged. The last thing we need right now, before we can eliminate some of that deficit with Washington, is a large across-the-board tax cut that would undermine our capacity to deal with the problems we have right here in the state. So in addition to my opposition to this on a large national basis, I am opposed to it in terms of what it would do to New York. And if I'm elected, I would vote against these tax cuts, these across-the-board large tax cuts, because I want to be sure that we take care of New York. We already are in a deficit position. I want to put together coalitions of both Republican and Democratic senators from big states that are similarly disadvantaged to fight to change these funding formulas. but we sure shouldn't be doing it in the face of the kind of challenge that would come from eliminating opportunities to, have a port or improve the border crossings, the kinds of things that the rest of the country would view as, not priorities, and we would be in a difficult position to fight for those with that kind of across-the-board tax cut. Now, I know that there are many ways that we can continue to get some help from the federal government so that we are able to take advantage of a continuing good economy. There isn't anything more important than education, and I'm delighted that we are here in a community college, because community colleges to me are the unsung heroes and heroines of our education system and of our economy, because it is places like these that work so closely with chambers and unions and businesses and high schools that really are doing the hard work of preparing people for the jobs that are in a region. And I have put forth an education platform and an economic development platform. I would ask you to go to my website, which is hillary2000.org, which has a lot of information about my proposals. But let me briefly just say that when it comes to the economy and what we need to do to make sure we take advantage of what's available, this chamber has already identified a lot of the priorities that I would work on. I believe we need to have the infrastructure for technology for the new economy throughout upstate New York. I would work for something I call technology bonds, which would provide local communities with federal funding to build the kind of infrastructure that's needed, to use both wired and wireless technology. I would look for ways to provide incentives for telephone companies to band together to provide coverage and broadband access to the internet. My husband was recently in North Carolina, where the telephone companies there announced with the governor that they would come together to wire the entire state of North Carolina, which has a lot of rural and poor places. We ought to be doing the same in New York. But when I was in Hamilton County yesterday, I was told that there are four small phone companies providing service in that rather isolated county in the Adirondacks, and that they didn't know how they were going to get the kind of broad-based service they need to provide the kind of internet access that would be very attractive to people for telecommuting, for businesses, and the like. Secondly, I want to create something that I call the Technology Extension Service. I go in and out of businesses all over the state, and there are a lot of small and medium-sized businesses with good products, good services. They can't afford a website. They don't know what computer services they need. They can't afford, some expensive assistant or consultant to come in and tell them. I think just as we used an extension service and still do today through Cornell to help our farming economy, we ought to have a technology extension service to help our business economy get up to date and get the support needed to provide the services so that every business, from Plattsburgh to Jamestown, can have that kind of entree into the new economy. I also believe we have to do a better job of making sure that the funding for these kinds of services are fairly distributed in rural areas, and that's something that I care deeply about and would fight for. I also want to be sure we support public education, and we need to be sure we provide the teachers that are going to be qualified in our schools. Right now we're facing a teacher shortage. It's predicted that New York will lose half our teachers in the next 10 years, and some parts of the state will lose even more in the next 5 years. New York City, for example, or Buffalo, places like that are looking at a very severe teaching shortage. I propose a national teacher corps so that any young person who was willing to be a teacher would get a full scholarship anywhere in return for teaching for 4 years in one of our schools that needed that. I'd also like to recruit into teaching some mid-career people, some professionals who might be enticed into teaching, and I would love to see if we couldn't get our retired teachers to consider coming back into teaching. And I think if we provide signing bonuses to athletes, we ought to provide signing bonuses to teachers. We need I also would like the federal government to construction, repair, and the wiring of our schools. And I know that if we could do that, it would help a lot of local communities that cannot afford to raise their property taxes be able to afford through loans and grants and through bonding authority that I would propose. If we don't get it this session of Congress, I'll work hard for it in the next, because it would provide local communities with bonding authority that they didn't have to pay the interest on the bonds. The bondholder would get a tax credit on his or her federal income tax, which would provide the cash needed to build, repair, and wire our schools. I also will fight in the Senate for the kind of legislation that will be the right sort of deregulation for the North Country when it comes to electricity. I know that one of the driving forces behind your success in making Plattsburgh the 10th ranked manufacturing sector community in the entire country is because you have worked to offer assistance through the Small Business Resource Center to keep those electric rates low. Well, we're going to deregulate electricity in our country. It's just a question, are we going to do it the way that'll help New York or hurt New York? And I will fight very hard to permit utility companies to join forces across state lines. This could save consumers some $20 billion a year in our country, and we have to bring more choice, more competition, and lower rates. We have a lot of work that we can do together, but I'm so heartened and excited by what you've already done. As you can tell, I'm something of an optimist. You know, I'm the kind of person who gets up every day and says the glass is half full, what are we going to do to try to fill it up? Because I think when you bring people together, when you work with people, when you set goals, when you think it can happen, we really can see progress. Now, if it were 1992 and I were standing here, I guess this building wouldn't be here in 1992, but we were somewhere else here on campus or in Plattsburgh, and I said, you know, I wish you'll support this Democratic candidate for president and his running mate, because if you do, we will end deficits, we will create millions of new jobs, we will reverse our social problems. Remember the days when we all thought that crime would keep going up no matter what? Now we can bring it down. Welfare would keep going up. Now we know we can bring it down. The kinds of changes we have seen in our country because of the right kind of political leadership and the right kind of partnership between the public and the private sectors. That has made it possible for Plattsburgh and for Clinton County and for the North Country to really build with your own efforts and enterprise the changes we have seen. Well, I said a long time ago, more than 30 years ago now, that I think politics is the art of making possible what appears to be impossible. We have demonstrated that we can take our fiscal house and put it in order, we can do what is required, and you have demonstrated that. You refuse to give up. You refuse to say that, well, the air base is gone, there goes the community. You rolled up your sleeves and you got to work. I'm going to run a campaign based on issues and ideas, and I'm going to ask to bring people together so that we can work to make the progress here even better and bring this kind of progress to the rest of the state. Thank you all very much.